Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the mass migration that's being forced on us in Australia. The leftist, Democrat type Labor government, as they're called here in Australia, has really turbocharged the mass immigration. It was already averaging, 250,000 people a year. Now they've bumped it up to close to double that. Why? Are there the jobs available here? No. Are the skills of the people coming in necessary for the economy? No. Are the standards rigorous in their ability to speak English and meet first world standards of education and qualifications and work experience? No. Well, hold on a minute. So why are these people being brought in? Well, no one actually knows. It's part of the globalist cabal scam of forcing third world peasants into the first world. That we know. But is it of any benefit to the first world? Well, no. It's a benefit to the third world peasants. They get to come to a rich white Western country. Obviously it's to their benefit, but is it to the benefit of the rich white Western countries? Well, of course not. Of course it's not. So let's have a little look at this. And it's the speed that these things are happening and the forced, absolutely forced nature of what's going on here. There's an outer suburb of Sydney that 2 years ago was 99% white. You'd be lucky to see a single brown person there, let alone a handful. So I was there just recently, and there's a new government building that's been put there, and it's quite large and employs quite a few people. And so I was going past, and as the people were, I'd actually gone past twice as they were coming out and sort of going in. And I thought I'd suddenly been teleported or transported to Mumbai in India or Delhi in India or some Indian, fucking, it was insane. There was only brown people going in and out of the building. There, you could only hear Indian being spoken, and they were not speaking English as they were going in the local train station, where you would have only seen white people just 2 years ago. I mean, it's not like it was 100 years ago, just 2 years ago. Now, white people are the minority, and you can't hear English being spoken on the train platform or on a bus stop or anything like that. So this is crazy. It happens that quickly. On a weekend going to the local park on a reasonably warm sort of day. Again, I think I was the only white person in the park. I mean, for goodness sakes, how did this happen so quickly? Again, a couple of years ago, there was no brown people. So what we're looking at here is where brown Indians, in this case, are being moved in en masse, in chunk, just a huge chunk of them just going bang, just being dropped into the middle of the place. So you say, well, how can they get jobs or something? How can they even do this? The government is giving them jobs. The government is inventing jobs, purely creating that out of thin air just for Indians. And then when a white person retires or something like that, leaves the government job, that job is reserved exclusively for brown people, or at least for non-white people. So if you're a white person hoping to get a job, then unless you're a lesbian or LGBTQ or trans or something, you might as well forget it. They're just not there unless you've got, you're well connected or something like that. So let's just have a look at the pattern here. Now, hundreds of thousands of Indians are being brought in, and others as well, but Indians primarily are being brought into Australia now. Now, again, I'm a well-travelled business guy, and I accept the reality that if you can get highly skilled people, highly capable and skilled people, and come and work in your economy, maybe they work for a bit less, then it's a boon to the economy. And we all benefit from that. Highly productive people coming into the economy with great skills, then that's good for the economy. I've got no problem with that. And if they meet a rigorous high bar in terms of the qualifications they have, the expertise, their accomplishments, and so if they meet a high bar and they want to come to the West and bring their exceptional skills, I've got no problem with that. The people like that should be welcomed, in my view, should be welcomed. Highly skilled, capable people, bring them in. So out of the hundreds of thousands, 200 odd thousand of Indians that came to Australia last year, more than that, how many of them would meet that high bar? Well, as it turns out, you'd be lucky if 1% met that high bar. Lucky if 1%. So out of the 220,000, you'd be lucky if 2,000 well qualified, capable Indians came in. The rest are just parasites that are being brought. So the bar isn't high. That exceptional skills bar is not high. It's very, very low. It's peasant. It's third world peasant low. So these people that have no qualifications, no work skills, no capability, but they are entitled to come to a first world country. These people are being brought in en masse, and they have nothing to offer, nothing to contribute. And even if they did have something to contribute, there are skills and capabilities already here in the local population. So why would you bring them in? You wouldn't. No sane person would, but this is what's happening. So in order to give them employment, or to make sure these Indians are walking off the boat or the plane almost straight into a government job. And they're just walking into a government job that's made for them. On top of that, organisations that supply, even small companies now, companies of like 50 people or less, that they supply services to the government or government departments, or even local governments. These people are being leaned on and squeezed. You've got to employ some Indians. If you want to do business with us, if you want access to white taxpayer dollars, white boy, you need to employ these brown people or else. And so they've got targets now. They have to have 20%, 30% in brown people, Indians in this case. And if you don't give them jobs, you can't apply for government contracts. The outrageous irony of this is white people's tax dollars that are being stolen from white people to subsidise the bringing in of gazillions of brown people from the third world, and then local companies that are owned by white people are then leaned on, saying, no, you've got to employ brown people, otherwise we won't let you have access to government contracts that are all fully paid for by white taxpayer dollars. Anyway, that's the madness of the situation. But I just want to go through this step by step. Hundreds of thousands of Indians, it doesn't have to be Indians, it could be any third world country, by the way. Hundreds of thousands of Indians are being brought in. And in my view, again, you'd be lucky if 1% of them were needed or wanted in the economy. The test of people needed in the economy is if they come in and completely meritoriously, of their own energy, their own time, their own capability, they go out into a competitive employment marketplace and they get a job. That's the test of are these skills needed and required in the economy. Now, if special carve-outs had to be made with affirmative action and DEI, gifting them government jobs by the gazillion, then they're not needed. They're clear. It's obviously, that's the statement of the obvious. They're simply not needed. Yet they're still being brought in by the hundreds of thousands. Now, when as I've mentioned before in previous videos, when the Indians first started arriving, there was no affirmative action, not in Australia anyway, no affirmative action or DEI or special government jobs being offered to them. They were, they had to go and compete in the job marketplace like anyone else. They found it really tough. Really tough. And a lot of them decided to go back to India. No, I can't hack it here. Now, of course, the scream went out. That's because of racism. Hitler's not giving him a job. Fascist, Nazi, swastika, all that sort of stuff got bandied around. But the reality was, and I was there at the time, employing people and hiring people and so on, and they just couldn't cut it. They talked a good fight with, they had triple PhDs and they had this and they had that. But as soon as you sat them down and said, okay, do some work, they just stare at you blankly because they couldn't do it. They'd either bribe their way to get a degree because they were, a wealthy, well-connected family, or they, university was just a place where you partied and found a future wife or husband, and it wasn't a place where you could do any work or study. And by the way, if you come from an upper social strata in India, the idea that you work or study or work hard or that you're judged in any way is unthinkable. So these people would come in and I'd fire them as quickly as I'd hire them because they were fucking useless. They just wouldn't do the work. And also their entire CV was just a manufactured bit of bullshit. They didn't have PhDs and this and that. That was all crap. So now some must have. Out of a population of pushing 1.5 billion, you've got to have some capable people there, and that's clearly the case. There must be some. But the ones that are coming certainly to Australia that I've come across and I've noticed, that they're not capable of anything. Now, it doesn't mean they can't have a nice little Socratic, philosophical, friendly, banter and dialogue and so on. They can, some of them, and they're very pleasant. I enjoy talking to them. But as employees, as useful employees, as capable people, they bring nothing to the table. They are not needed in the West, other than minuscule numbers. And again, if people that capable want to come to the West to work, they should be. But by lowering the bar and having just parasite people coming in, it's achieving nothing for anybody. It's lowering everybody's standard of living, and it's creating a cost of to the community and to the society, to the country at large, that isn't needed, that achieves nothing, creates nothing, builds nothing, delivers nothing. And so this is now, in the area, there are a number of parts of Sydney where there's another high-rise apartments, and every apartment block is fully, it's an Indians only thing. There isn't anybody else there. There's no white people or anything. It's Indians only. How does that happen? Just really, in an organic, meritorious, natural sense, just natural, organic development. How does that happen? That the whole apartment is Indian, the whole apartment block is Indian, then the next apartment one, then the next one, the next one, the next one. It's all Indians. I mean, how can that happen? Clearly, there's a monopoly, cartel type practices going on here. So we're not talking about anything. So the Indians are coming in non-meritoriously. They're coming in non-meritorious, but not by the ones and twos, but by the hundreds of thousands, multiple hundreds of thousands. They're coming in. Then they're being given gifted jobs at the expense of the taxpayer, by the way, whether it's private companies being leaned on to give Indians jobs or the government gives them jobs. How many Indians are actually getting jobs meritoriously? Any? I mean, again, it'll be a handful. The rest are being gifted jobs they otherwise would have no chance of getting based on merit. How are they able to buy up whole streets and suburbs and everyone living there is Indian? How are they able to do that unless it's a prearranged cartel type situation? So we're talking about something here that's a huge impost on Australia and the rest of the Western world. People coming in by the gazillion that deliver and produce, create and build nothing. They're purely here to loot and parasite off the rich Western white society. And that needs to stop. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.